Alright guys, so in this example we're going to be talking about completing the square. So when you complete the square, essentially what you're trying to find out is where this function, okay, is crossing the x-axis, or in other words, you're trying to find the zeros, okay? So we know that when a function crosses the x-axis, the y value will always be equal to 0. So your first step when completing the square, you want to take your f of x and you want to replace it with a 0, alright? And then we'll be in a position to go ahead and solve by completing the square. Okay, so let's go ahead and rewrite this. So we're going to have x squared plus 2x minus 15 equal to 0. Again, when you complete the square, you're trying to find the zeros or the values where it's crossing the x-axis. Okay? Now, in order to complete the square, in this case, a is going to be equal to 1. So if we go back to our standard form of a quadratic, right, we're going to have ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so in this case we can see that our a is going to be 1. Alright? Now, in order to complete the square, you need to be in the following form. You're going to have to be in x squared plus bx. Now, in order to get in this form, I'm going to have to move this constant over to the right. Alright? So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll have x squared plus 2x equal to 15. Alright? Now I'm in this form, x squared plus bx, where b is 2. Okay? So again, I'm in the correct form. At this point, you can go ahead and you can start completing the square. So in order to do that, you're going to do b over 2 squared on both sides. So for example, rewriting this, we'll have x squared plus 2x, and now b over 2 squared. So in other words, we'll have plus 2 over 2 squared equal to 15. Now be careful here. Since we're dealing with an equation here, what we do to one side, we also have to do to the other. So since I did 2 over 2 squared here, I also have to add a 2 over 2 squared here. So plus 2 over 2 squared. Now let's go ahead and just simplify this down. So we'll have x squared plus 2x, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. And again, this will just be 1, so 15 plus 1 is going to be 16. Right? At this point, you want to go ahead now and you want to factor, okay, this left side here. So we want to go ahead and factor. So think about how we're going to do that. Well, this is going to become the following. We'll have x plus 1 squared equal to 16. Okay? And now we want to actually get the zeros here, so we want to solve for x, right? So we're simply just going to take the square root on both sides, right, to get rid of this exponent. So when we take the square root on both sides now, right, we get the following. And just rewriting over here, we'll have x, let's kind of make, so this is divided, x plus 1 equal to, well, the square root of 16 here is going to be plus or minus 4. Plus or minus 4. And our last step is just to subtract 1 on both sides. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus 4. Or in other words, right, if we do each of these operations out, a negative 1 plus 4, so we'll write it down here, x equals, right, a negative 1 plus 4 will give us 3, right, and x also equals what? Negative 1 and a negative 4, negative 5. Okay? So what we just did there was we found the zeros by completing the square. Again, this is where it's crossing the x-axis. In other words, that is where y is equal to 0. Okay? Alright, and that is how you go about completing the square when a is equal to 1.